Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hair Healer Podcast. I'm your host, Colleen the Hair Healer. I invite you to embark with me upon a journey of exchanging energy and creating conversations with my clients as we discuss our journeys through life. So come with me and let's see where today's episode takes us. Happy Monday, everyone, and happy full moon in Virgo. I know a lot of us felt it over this past weekend as we started to gear up into this full moon. It is March and I'm excited because spring is coming. I can feel it. And this is the perfect full moon to give us things to let go of in order to align us, in order to move us forward into spring and into a new vibe, we'll say. So right now we are going to let go of what no longer serves us. So the full moon, look at it as things come up, again, that no longer serve us, that we have to let go in a way. So a lot of times they come up, right? We make a conscious decision to review, reflect, and then write down and burn or let go however you want to let go. And also there's many different ways to get a conscious decision on something to let go of, not just writing. Once I get it, I prefer to write it all down just so it's there, it's solid, I see it, I connect with it, and then I burn it and let that shit go. Please and thank you. So this full moon in Virgo, when they come up, they're going to be here to elevate our spirit, make it higher. Now, you may feel the need to also organize the internal and external of your life. If things are messy on the inside, they're going to be messy on the outside. And so things right now, Virgo likes you to be tidy, clean, and organized. So remember, that can be internally. It's not just externally. But remember, externally, if your room, right, which is a lot of times where you have a greater connection with things in life, with your conscious, subconscious, all of that stuff comes from your shrine. Mine is in my bedroom. Remember, stale energy lays on our things. It lays on our clothes. It lays on our shoes. It lays on bedding. It lays on various different things. And then that goes into our vibration. It goes into our chakras and it just creates a lot of stale energy. So take this full moon. Things are coming up in Virgo for you to release and let go of. And if things feel out of balance for you, Virgo likes balance, look at what is out of balance for you. What can you let go of that you no longer need that's still somehow causing an imbalance in your life? Look at that. That may be coming up for you today, and you might see it today. And again, write with it, connect with it, and just let it all go. And the quickest way to align with ourselves, our spiritual path, everything is to understand that nothing is perfect. We will never be perfect. We can just let that go, let that idea of perfectionism go and just go with the ride of life. And we will better align with who we are and our spiritual purpose that we are here. Our souls are here for some sort of karmic spiritual purpose. And in order to find that, we have to get honest with ourselves, get honest with our emotions, our deep emotions. Where are these things coming from? And what is causing us, again, to get out of balance externally and internally. So the full moon, I know it can be very crazy, but just flow with it and have faith that everything is going to work out for our greatest good, our highest good, because it always is. No matter what, we are always on the right path. Okay, let's get into today's episode with my client, Sarah. I'm really excited about this. Sarah is a small town Midwest girl in Illinois. Moved out here, I guess, 20 years ago to go to law school. And she kind of had that big break from the small town. And so she's a lawyer out here and not a criminal defense attorney, but around about 2 years ago, she got a call from someone she grew up with, someone she went to high school with, that said their adult child was charged with not so very good crime that he did not do. And there were a lot of mishandlings and conducts among the police. So she decided to take it pro bono, and she has been out there kicking ass and taking names. What's funny, and what I've been joking with her about this case since she first told me 2 years ago, is it's like a Hallmark movie, okay? Except she's married now, so she's not going to go back to her hometown to find love. But when she did go back to this small town, the sheriff's her ex-boyfriend, and the prosecutor knows the family, and it's like everyone's running into each other, and it's just a funny Hallmark movie, and she is out there doing something for the greater good, something to really help someone pro bono. But this case is super interesting. That's why I was happy she was willing to come in and talk about it, because there was so much police misconduct, what you would probably think in a small town of kind of hush-hush, hiding things and lying for each other and lots of cover-ups. And she's just in there tearing them down left and right and getting to the bottom of this. So this is a really cool and awesome episode. I'm super grateful that Sarah was willing to come to the podcast and tell me all about her case. So again, I'm really grateful for that. She's an awesome person, has an awesome soul, wonderful client, and she's like a family member. So again, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for everyone who's listening today on the first day. Love you all. Let me shut up and let's get into this interview. Hey everyone, here we are at the Hair Healer Studio, aka Capriati Salon at the color table on a Sunday. I don't normally do Sundays, so it's kind of a fun, different vibe. I feel like I have a little more energy and I'm ready to go. Today we have my amazing client, Sarah, and I want to start out with when we were doing our little bloopers in the beginning and trying to figure out how our voices sound together. She told me something that was interesting that I think is cool for females to hear. So introduce yourself and let's start off with that.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah. And we were talking at the beginning, we did our sound check and I listened to myself and I heard my voice start to go down at the end of my sentences and kind of trail off. And as I was listening, I told Colleen I need to remind myself not to engage in vocal fry. And that is when we, as kind of younger generation females, the 40 to 20 age range, I'm a little over 40, but that general age range, tend to engage in vocal fry sometimes when we're speaking. And that's when at the end of our sentences, we trail off and our voices sound almost like they're fried, right? Like this at the end of your sentence. Yes. You go down in volume and it kind of fizzles out a little bit. That's a pretty universal cultural phenomenon for a lot of females when speaking. And it's viewed by our male colleags and males as being the collective, as being a very submissive and not very important way of speaking. So they tend to look down upon that, even though it's kind of a common thing. So it's one thing as a public speaker and as a lawyer who's trying to project confidence, I try to remind myself, particularly when I can hear it, not to engage in vocal fry.
Oh my God.
Which I just did. Vocal fry.
Can I just tell you that I know for a fact you're going to be in my head for probably the rest of my life with that, because I have never heard of that, but I do that and I know afterwards how I feel when I do it. I've never been able to put a term to what it is. And a lot of times I do usually do it in the presence sometimes of a male or a female or even clients. And it's whether I feel nervous for whatever reason, or like you said, we both have adult ADD. So sometimes I don't even know what I'm saying when I'm talking, or I lose the words. And I do that.
It's like your head is already in a different place. You're kind of trailing off with one thought as your head is moving to your third or fourth thought. I have no idea what that's like, Colleen. No.
Sometimes my favorite move that I realize to do afterwards is I just walk away mid-sentence. Especially here at the salon, we talked about we'll be talking. I don't even know what I'm saying right now and stop mid-sentence. Sometimes you just have to walk away.
I love that that's your reaction.
And especially if it's a client who's maybe more shy or doesn't show reactions. Because as people with ADD, what I've learned through my therapist is that we need to figure out people's reactions and how they look.
Yes.
Right? Because we focus so much on how their physical form is with us that so when I have someone who has kind of just no reaction to what I'm saying that I know is not making sense, I just figure it's best to walk away.
Do you know what this reminds me of? I just started watching that Versace.
I've been wanting to watch that.
Okay, I just started watching it on Netflix. It's the story of Versace. Yeah. And I was watching the very first episode yesterday, and Versace is looking in the mirror at someone who he's dressing up for this grand opera. And he says to her as he's dressing her, I don't look at the dresses when I dress people. I look at their faces. And as soon as I see on their faces that smile and that confidence in their body, I know I've done it correctly and the dress looks right and they're ready to go.
Oh my God.
Isn't that cool? That just reminds me of what you just said,
yes.
Right?
Oh
that you read so much into people's faces, yes. Right? And how they're feeling. And if they're not being transparent, we look for that, yes. Right? And I need that feeling of, okay, you're smiling, you're looking good, you're appreciating the conversation, whatever. And when you don't get that reciprocity, it feels very awkward, right?
Thank you. Again, you described like situations behind my chair when, again, I have a new client or certain clients that just don't express, or maybe they are a regular client and they aren't expressing that they don't like their hair. I can always tell if they're not like smiling in my chair, if they're just like, yeah, it's nice. And like no smile, no any. I'm like, oh my God, like just tell me the truth. But I look for that. I love when people, and I can break it down to signs. And you're always like this cheat, like, oh my God, I love it. It's amazing. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, that's perfect. I feel like then I did my job because I fulfilled their soul in that way and made them happy for the hour, 2 hours that they were in my presence and in my chair.
Right. It's like that feedback that you're looking for. Another interesting tidbit.
Yes, please. I mean,
going down this line of discussion is I recently read a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Talking to Strangers.
Talking to Strangers.
Yes. And there is this concept in there called transparency. And he talks about how we as a culture expect transparency in people's emotions. And he likens it to watching an episode of Friends. Okay. And he says, you can watch an episode of Friends without any sound and know exactly what is going on in that episode because they play it on their faces. You're right. It's transparent, and it's the way we as a society view their emotions and how they should look. So they look happy when they're supposed to look happy, and they're giving us the big smiles. They look, confused with these like furrowed eyebrows when they're supposed to look confused. But that's all kind of what we transpose onto those emotions as a society. And not everybody reacts the same way. So when we are faced with people who have emotions that aren't transparent, that is very confusing for us because we read certain emotions as looking certain ways on people. And how that's where a large breakdown in communications with people comes from is when people don't portray their emotions the way we culturally think they should.
I feel like you just blew my mind with that.
It's just fascinating.
It's fascinating because you're absolutely right. And I'm just thinking as you're talking, like, why don't we teach this in schools? Why don't we teach like emotional intelligence, and how maybe that could be like your new thing in the future is you could figure out how to bring emotional intelligence into schools.
I mean, that's so important,
so
too.
important. And they know nothing. I don't remember one thing from high school, and I didn't need to learn any of it to get where I am today, honestly. I mean, my English class.
No, 100%.
My English class, my gym class. Not my gym class, actually. I didn't do anything. My English class is what I keep going back to. I was there to entertain everyone. I was voted class clown my senior year. So... And I was also, I think, number 50 out of 75 that I graduated with. So that tells you a lot about
you made it to the finish line.
That's all that counts. And my parents were so happy. That's exactly how they found it. You made it.
I always say that the most useful class that I took in high school was typing.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
100%.
Wow.
And I mean, I loved high school. I was very good at studying. I took public speaking, and I was a competitive public speaker all through high school and college. So that obviously was helpful as well.
I can't tell it all in this interview. I'm kidding. You're amazing. I got to pick up pointers from you. Go ahead, continue.
But typing, I always say, was the most useful class I took because everything else is kind of background knowledge. Nothing that I at least am cognizantly pulling out on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I learned how to survive from the Oregon Trail.
I didn't get dysentery. I won. Yay!
I would always die crossing the river. I felt like that was always like the hardest part is taking my group, taking my troop and my soldiers and whatever the hell else was it and dying in the river.
Ugh.
Right?
Ugh, Darwinism. That's tough. Those poor soldiers. They should have never followed you.
They shouldn't have. No one should.
They should have known.
Unless you want to go on an adventure that maybe would end in death, don't come along with me. That's it. That's the rule.
That's comforting.
And do you know what? My therapist always says people with ADD, adult ADD, we should come with like a warning sign because at first we're like, oh my God, those people are like, they're so amazing. They're funny. They're so different. They're everything. And then you like get to know them closer and you're like, oh my God, everything in their life is a mess. Why are they so like into me? And then they like back out 1,000%. Because we don't know boundaries. We're like, oh my God, I agree. I love everything about you. And then I'm like, okay, I just gave way too much. I need to just like pull back. I'm out of here. Goodbye. And then
I'll see you in a couple months.
See you in a couple months. And then we'll let a whole entire world blow up. And then we'll just rebuild it the next day somewhere else. So we're very like up and down. And she said we need to come with a warning sign. So there's a warning sign for people's adult ADD, but you'll never be bored.
That's so funny because my husband recently said he saw something that I never saw. And he said, it's really interesting, your friendships with other women, because he said you tend to gravitate very heavily toward one or two women for a few months, and then you'll gravitate toward another set for a few months and maybe go back a few months later. And I had never noticed that about myself. I tried to.
It's funny what other people notice.
Right. I try to have, very good friendships with a lot of different women. And I do have very close, I think, friendships with a lot of different women. But I suddenly thought, oh no, I hope that's not hurtful to other people, because I had never viewed it the way that he was viewing it. So it really made me try to become more introspective and make sure that my interactions with my female friends aren't in a way that's going to hurt them. Because I do tend, after he mentioned that, I do tend to kind of come in and out, not purposefully in any kind of hurtful manner,
Same.
but it just happens because maybe I'm more home-based these 2 months. And so I'm socializing with the people in my subdivision. And maybe the next few months I'm working a lot, so I'm socializing more with the people who I'm working with. And maybe the next few months I'm socializing more with the women in my preschool, because that happens to be where I'm like revolving around at the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
But then I don't intentionally cut off communication with the other groups. It just kind of happens that I only have the bandwidth to focus on so many people at one time.
That's it. And I think it's like for me, it's sometimes an energy thing. Like it's like that in that moment, right? Because we all come with different energy like that. That's who I'm aligning with at that time, right?
Yeah.
So we tend to be more aligned, and maybe our life situations are just in the same place, or our schedules. And then sometimes, and it's not that, just sometimes we unalign for a little bit. And then I align over here with this person, But when it comes down to it, you're always there for them.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yes.
And that's why, especially as we evolve and we get busy and we have kids, and do you know what I mean? And then once the kids grow up, we'll be back to having friendships again.
Right.
And
I think I see people with ADHD very clearly, and I appreciate those friendships because I know my buddy over here, she may not text me for 2 months, but then she'll be back, and I'm fine with that.
Me
because
too.
I don't need that constant affirmation. But then I forget when other people aren't that way and do need more affirmation, that sometimes I need to be a better friend on their terms.
Yes.
But still drawing my own boundaries, obviously.
Yes.
But I forget that not everybody interacts in the same way, and I have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah. I try to do that and be cognizant with my ADD. I think it comes out like with texting my friend. And again, it's not personal. Someone will text me, and with ADD, you really have to put a lot of focus. And if it's someone I really need to like talk to, not just like say my generic, like, oh my God, thanks, it's amazing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I'll say, I'll get back to them. I'm in a with a client or whatever. And then I'll instantly be like, okay, I gotta like post this thing I forgot to post. You know what I mean? And then I post that, and then I realize 5 hours later I forgot to get back to that person. Okay. And it is ADD. It's many different thoughts, and I try to like, I feel like bad. I'm sorry. So if I do that to you, I'm sorry. And like, don't ever feel bad about texting me again. But like, I don't mean to. It's just like, obviously at first I put my business when my mind comes back out of my thing, my like kids and business are there. And then I'm like, oh, so, but if I have my phone, I'm in the texting moment, I'll text you. But I try to be more cognizant of that, as well.
Yeah. I'm the same way because I have some friends who are really good about texting and I'm sporadic. And then they don't understand, like they think I'm somehow mad at them because I didn't respond to their last text. And it's exactly the same thing. Maybe I'm mulling it over because I want to send a more substantive answer. And then 20 other things get on my priority list. And I don't think to go back and respond because it's just fallen off of my radar. So yes, my apologies. Right.
But in the middle of like we're cooking dinner or we're like
or I know you're asleep, but I don't want to text you at 2 a.m.
Yes, so many times.
Yeah.
And I think that as so many people took ADD lightly, do you know what I mean? And we've had to forge a way in adult ADHD, but it's like this is another way to look at like people living with bipolar and it might not be as extreme as we're not like causing harm to ourselves or other in that sort of way or depressed. We're just like have no grip of what really is going on in life. We're just sort of in this like tornado bubble of like and that's how we see life. Like I know things should get done. This is the way I describe it to people. Okay. If for visual right now, my hand is like open wide beside my face, beside my head. And so I know things should get done, but I'm shaking my hand right now. And that's all I see. Like when I look to the corner of my brain and see shit that should get done, I just see it moving blurry. And then I say, all right, we'll get back to that later.
Right. One thing I have found that has been somewhat helpful is having a place to put all those thoughts because they keep coming back and then I push them out.
Yeah.
Because I can't handle whatever that to-do task is right now.
Yes.
But then I feel bad because it falls off my radar I got an app called Todoist.
Todoist.
It's just a to-do list, right? But it's an app, and so it's on my phone, so I always have it. And then if it's 2 a.m., I think to myself, oh, wow, I forgot I needed to respond to my friend about this particular issue. And so I just press a button, I put it in there. And so I know it's always on my list of things to get done. So the next morning when I'm like, oh, what was that thing that was bothering me? I just open Todoist and it's on there.
What's it called? Todoist. So no L.
That's right.
Todoist.
And I have it on my phone and you can also pull it up on your computer. So when I'm at work, I try to have it open on my computer.
That's genius.
And so if something happens at work, I can put it on there, like something that pops into my head. And you can also make folders on here. So if you have projects that you need to do, so this is like for my pro bono case, I just made like a gigantic to-do list for that particular case. So it's not on my main task list, but it's all those are subcategorized. I have a hard time subcategorizing things unless it's something major like that. Like otherwise, I just need to throw all my thoughts in one spot. So that's why I particularly like the task list. So I just keep a running thing. And then look, once you're done, you go boop, and then it goes
flu
right
shot.
off. Flu shot done. Actually, I didn't get my flu shot. I will never not again get my flu shot though, because I have been paranoid every day this entire season that I'm going to get the flu.
The coronavirus?
Yeah, the coronavirus.
Can I just tell you something? So my kid's father is retired military, was in Iraq, and it's hilarious. I don't watch the news anymore. I really don't. But I know that he'll update me if there's ever anything important. I have gotten, since like this whole thing kicked off, like 4 times a day an update in China, how many people, and he somehow is following something else because he's a little bit conspiracy theorist, but this one is believable. He does not believe that China is telling the truth about how
they're
many
not.
people.
They're definitely not.
They're not telling the truth.
No.
And they sent those bugs on purpose. They hate us. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I actually...
maybe a little bit conspiracy theory.
I know that is. No, I'm kidding. Listen, I love China. Please, that's a joke. but we don't like
So
the bugs.
China, please don't come over
Please
here
don't come over
and
here.
send the coronavirus
And
to
please
Capriati Salon.
don't mute the hair healer. Let everyone in China listen to the hair healer podcast. If I YouTube, just don't mute me. I'm sorry, but we don't like the bugs.
I heard from a friend of mine who her daughter-in-law's family is from Wuhan. And they said that the media reports are greatly underplaying how severe it is in Wuhan.
Wow.
And so according to my inside scoop,
we got the
via
inside
third or
scoop.
fourth hand, that conspiracy that he has come up with is 100% correct.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. That's the media's really scary.
The media is so scary. And I think what 2020, what's going to happen now, but what this one of the silver linings, I think, of what had happened in 2016, right, is that we did see such a falsehood across the board, right? And and we understand how our brain works and how easy it is to influence anyone.
Manipulate
and influence the media. And even myself, like, again, I'll just when I see things politically or whatever, maybe I screenshot and send it to him, because he knows, if that's real or it's not real.
Good for you for questioning.
Even if it's something I believe in, I question it, because so much I know for myself, again, the ADD, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Click. And then post it or something like that. And it could be something, there's so many times where they kind of know that's not real at all. Or even something stupid. I don't know what it was, something to do with the Australian fires. I can't remember what it was. And I screenshot that and he's like, no, that didn't happen.
Really?
I mean, that happened, the fires, but it was, sorry.
They're making up all those fires. Liars, pants on fire.
So it was something in there that was someone had said.
Okay.
It was I guess they're having I have some friends in Australia and some followers over there, and they're having very similar battles that we are between the liberal or whatever, The political
landscape is very
blah, blah.
Blah, blah.
See, she's already teaching me so much on here. So let's get into the main part of this, which I'm excited. So Sarah is a badass female lawyer, okay, who worked her way up in spite of being a female from the Midwest. And she's in a very interesting pro bono case. This is not what she normally does. And she's going to talk a little bit about growing up and doing this case without saying too many of the facts that aren't. We're only going to say facts that are public.
Right.
So take us there.
So let's see. Let me start with a little bit of my background. So I grew up all over the Midwest, and small town Southern Illinois is where I landed when I was right before I started high school. So that's what I consider to be my hometown. And growing up in small town Midwest was lovely. I had a lot of great experiences. I was in, tons of extracurricular activities, did very well, but I didn't know a lot of lawyers in my hometown, no female lawyers at all. I did have a couple of great mentors though. And I went to junior college because my family didn't have a ton of money, and that was amazing. The best choice for me at the time. I went to junior college on a full ride competitive speech scholarship. And then I went to undergrad after that, also in Illinois. And even then, people were saying, my mom always said, you should be a lawyer. Other people said, you should be a lawyer. You love to speak.
Argue.
Love to argue. And so, but I always, being the contrary one, said, no, I'm going to do something totally different with my life. After I graduated from undergrad, I became a social worker for a couple of years, really enjoyed that. But I felt like I wasn't able to help people as much as I really wanted to. So I started to look into getting my master's degree in social work. And so this is just a funny way of kind of telling you my story, is also showing you how life has a way of just working itself out the way it should, right?
Always.
And I didn't know people studied for things like the GRE because I'm from small town. I always did well, but I just didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have other people who I knew who had master's degrees.
Exactly.
And so I think I got a book and studied for a week before the GRE. I did not do well on the GRE. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll try the LSAT. Let's see how that works. Swear. So I studied for a month for the LSAT.
Okay, that's good. A little better for an ADD. That's pretty good for someone with ADD, honestly.
Took the LSAT, did better than the GRE. Still not fantastic, but good enough. And went to law school for my first year at Southern Illinois University. It was a great law school. Did well my first year, and then had the opportunity to transition to a different school after that. And I ended up at a top tier law school after that. And it was interesting coming from Southern Illinois Law School into Duke Law School.
North Carolina,
North
right?
Carolina.
Wow.
Yeah. It was huge. And it was just a different type of person than I was used to. I mean, I'm from Southern Illinois, very rural, not a ton. Like I said, I went to junior college because I didn't have money to go to a university. Yeah. So I show up the first day at Duke Law School in my beat up car. It was literally duct taped together. There was almost no muffler on it. And I remember parking in the parking lot, and it was all Mercedes and Lexus.
Oh my God.
I just felt like immediately like a fish out of water.
Like, what the fuck?
And it was a difficult transition, I think, mentally, because I felt very inferior. And it took me a while to kind of feel a little bit more confident in that environment, coming from having very little and not really being surrounded by people who had a lot better sense of what they needed to do educationally to get where they needed to go, and who had just more, money financially. Yeah. And it's amazing what a difference that makes in your trajectory in life, to be honest. Wow. Which I realized when I was suddenly surrounded by it, really.
How old were you?
I was at that time 23 or 24.
Yeah. So on top of it, you were, wow. Yeah. So you're starting to mature too. Right. It's not like you're 19 rolling in there.
Right. So, anyway, I went to law school there, got my degree, did well, and then came out. And my goal in going to law school is I wanted to help people, right? Yeah. And so I came out and I got a job at a big law firm, which was not at all what I had anticipated going into law school for. But I really enjoyed it. In part, I enjoyed the mental rigor of it. Yeah. But then I also enjoyed the fact that I got to do pro bono cases. So from the very beginning of my law firm career, I was very active in doing pro bono cases. I helped, I was a child advocate. Wow. I'm still a child advocate in a couple different cases where I help children who are in the foster care system. And I've helped families going through divorces. I've helped families going through custody battles. And so a big part of my career has also been giving back, because it's really huge. The cornerstone of why I became a lawyer is I wanted to help people. Yeah. So I had a good balance, I think, from the beginning of doing some level of pro bono along with my corporate commercial litigation work. And about a year ago, I had an interesting call from a friend who, from my hometown.
Wait, before you go into the story, Can I just say this?
Yes.
I, this morning, was thinking, and I thought this before, except that you're married, or this story, before we get to it, is a Hallmark movie. Okay? Because you just return, I was thinking about you return to your hometown, this small hometown, this hot lawyer who made it big. And then you fall in love with the small town, whatever, but she's married, so it's not going to happen. So sorry, continue with that. I just want to give that visual Hallmark movie.
It's funny because I often describe it as seeming like a Hallmark movie because that's the way it feels sometimes.
Except you have a husband. You just needed to be single and fall in love with
That's
the
right.
bartender that was in 9th grade or whatever when you were there.
You haven't even heard the best part.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Let's get the story.
So it does feel, as Colleen said, a little bit like a Hallmark movie because one of many reasons why is, I came out, as I just described, coming from small town, came out, was very overwhelmed, but eventually learned how to fit in on the East Coast with the big time lawyers. And then had this friend call from back home about her son. Her son had been charged with a very serious crime. And the case had already been ongoing for a few years. She said they had no evidence that she was aware of, really. And they just kind of assumed that the case was going to be dropped because nothing had really progressed over the span of a couple years. And then in October of 2 years ago now, the prosecutor gave him a plea offer of 10 years in jail. And so she called me saying, just essentially, you're a lawyer, I know. Yeah. What do you think I should do?
Yeah.
We thought this case was going to be dismissed. We didn't think they have any evidence. He didn't do it.
And they easily scare you into plea deals.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
Yes. And so I said, look, let me see if my firm will allow me to take it pro bono. He definitely, her adult son doesn't have, a ton of money, and I thought he would qualify financially. And, but I said, if that's what they're offering, I don't know what is in the file. So we'll have to take a look, and I'll give you my best guess as to what this should, whether you should plea out or whatever the issue might be. So, but for 10 years, that's pretty serious.
That's serious. That's a long
your
time.
Plea, right?
It's a decade.
And so I'm expecting this massive file, and it comes into the office, and it was 20 pages, and that was it. And I contacted the public defender who had it before me, and I said, is this the entire case file that you have? And she said, yes. I was surprised too, because she was the third public defender who had been on the case.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so she said, yeah, I was surprised too, for a case that had been going on for this long, that it was 20 pages long, and really only 4.5 pages of a police report. That was it.
That was it.
On a case that is very, very serious. So I get the police report, and it's only 4.5 pages long. And I start to really look into these allegations. The first thing that really piques my interest is the fact that it had taken the police approximately 3 weeks to conduct a search.
3 weeks?
3 weeks.
Which normally they're supposed to do it in what, like 24 hours?
I mean, as soon as reasonably possible, because you don't want evidence to go stale. This is very, very serious allegations, and it takes them 3 weeks to execute the search warrant. And because you don't want the evidence to go missing, you don't want it to be tainted.
Lots of things.
All of those things, right?
I'm sure is guaranteed in 3 weeks.
Exactly. It's not like it had been roped off or anything like that. So that to me is a bit of a red flag. And I'm wondering why it took the police officers 3 weeks to execute the search warrant. And then I start looking at what they got in the search warrant. Now, mind you, my poor client had 3 other attorneys. None of them ever asked any of these questions, right?
Yeah.
So they had collected during the execution of the search warrant a few items from the defendant's house, my client's house, that were arguably circumstantial evidence. Could have suggested that the crime took place, right? And I mean, honestly, it's not a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination, but would have been perhaps circumstantial evidence. But we know, at least I'm aware, that it's not something that my client's telling me that. I have to be careful about what I say. So these are not my client's things. All right.
Not.
No, but they are found in the house.
Yeah.
And so I start asking questions saying, can I see these items? Because I'm thinking maybe they were planted there, right? It was 3 weeks before the police went back to conduct the search. And mind you, my client was not in the home after the allegations were made, so he had no opportunity himself to move anything or change anything, right? So I'm thinking, but the other people who were involved in the allegations did have access to the home at that time.
Wow.
So my first thought is, let me just take a look at the evidence. The police had never tested it to see if there was any DNA, any fingerprints, or anything on it.
What?
Yeah, never tested it. And so I start asking. I go to the police station. I say, I'd like to see the evidence. And they give me runaround for about a month. Every time I call, every time I stop in, which, by the way, is really hard when you're from Philadelphia and you're trying to go to Illinois to obtain the evidence. It's not like I'm there every other day. Right. But I'm regularly contacting them. And every time I go there, I'm told a different story. Well, this person who has the key to the evidence room is not here. Well, we need permission from this person in order to allow you in. So there's about a month of runaround. And finally, a week before we are supposed to go to trial, the prosecutor calls me and says, the evidence has been lost. We don't have it. And not only do we not have the evidence, but it was never logged into evidence.
Isn't that an easy slam dunk? Like, all right, throw the case away. Like, I feel like I hear that that's what happens.
So no, unfortunately, it is not a slam dunk, or at least it wasn't in this case. We did file a motion to dismiss the case based on the loss of the evidence. And in what the judge decided was that the evidence that they lost and don't have is not admissible. But the case could go forward based solely on the allegations.
But I feel like this is opposite of everything I've ever learned from Law and Order SVU.
Funny enough, you can convict someone only on allegations.
Wow.
I had no idea, to be honest, even though I'm an attorney and I went to law school.
That doesn't seem fair.
But you literally can convict someone solely on uncorroborated allegations.
And I feel like it's so easy to find evidence, right? But I feel like it's just not okay. They lost it. You can't, you know what I mean? It's gone. How are you going to risk changing someone's life and putting them behind bars for 10 years?
And 10 years was the plea. He could go, the charges in this case are up to 60 years. So that was the plea was 10, right?
On lost evidence.
And there was no evidence, there were no witnesses, there was nothing. And I can't really, of course, that is the defense's point of view. But there is no more physical evidence there, period. It's all been lost or destroyed. And the state admitted to losing and destroying all the evidence. And that's, I think, been the most challenging part for me personally, is seeing how the police ran this case, how the prosecutors have run this case, and there having been no repercussions so far for the police and how the case was run has been very frustrating.
Is there any political ties, right? Like the police or something? Can you talk about like making it want to look good, right? To, sometimes like get this person, you know what I mean? Solve some crime.
So I think that it's really an issue of being, it's a small town and everybody believes that the police are 100% correct all the time.
They are.
And so that's their truth, right?
Yeah.
And when you suggest that that's not the case, people just dismiss that. And that's been the most frustrating thing for me to know, even in the face of what I consider to be insurmountable evidence that the police messed up this investigation. And not only that, lied about it, that there have been no repercussions. There's been no effort made to change the way so far the police system is being run. And it's really opened my eyes to the prosecutions and how they're run, and how important it is to have a very good defense, because my poor client would have never had these opportunities. And we would have never even known that the evidence was lost if I hadn't come on board and simply started asking these questions.
And that's a third person. So there was public defenders, correct?
There were 3 previous public defenders
Public
before
pretenders.
me. Public pretenders.
Back in when I was young and on drugs.
That's a Freudian slip right there.
Back whenever I was young and on drugs, that's what we would call them, like the public pretenders.
No way,
yeah, that's what they do. Yeah, because so many times you get like, and I'm sure a lot of times they're tired too, right? They're probably overworked, they're getting all these cases. But a lot of times, kind of like depending on what area you're in, not every public defender is like this. But you just get, it's like going to Supercuts, no offense, for a haircut, essentially. Right. So you came along, and most people, luckily you're doing this pro bono, cannot afford this. And what I'm thinking is, this is one tiny, tiny little town. In America. How often do you think this happens across the board?
A ton. And that's super frustrating. And it's also very frustrating that even when we pointed out that the lead investigator messed up the investigation and committed perjury on the stand in this case, a week after my closing remarks in the motion to dismiss hearing, they made the lead investigator sheriff of the town. And that has been very difficult for me to understand, because he committed a crime by committing perjury.
Yeah.
And nothing has happened. And we're pretending that everything's okay.
And then everyone voted for him.
He wasn't voted in. The previous sheriff stepped down.
Okay. So then he just sort of got that.
He apparently was appointed. Yes.
Now, I'm imagining for your Hallmark movie, I'm imagining another scene. Did you run into any of the prosecutors or police at like the local diner, or when you're walking, they walk in, or you're sitting there like just trying to de-stress and drink coffee and look, and in they walk to get a pie?
So yeah, let me give you all my Hallmark moments. So this is a very small town and everybody knows everybody. I go in one of the very first times to look for the evidence, which at the time I didn't know wasn't there, and attend one of the hearings. And I met at my parents' for lunch, and I come into this restaurant and I see the sheriff sitting at a table in the restaurant. I go sit at a different table. My parents come in after I do and go and they hug the sheriff and they bring the sheriff.
Your parents?
And then they bring the sheriff over to talk to me.
Shut up.
I swear.
So what do you say?
And they introduced me, and I just said, "Hi, it's nice to meet you." Because remember, this was before I had started asking questions. He at that point did not know me.
Oh my God, that is such a hallmark. Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So that was a little awkward, at least in my mind, probably not his mind. Perhaps after the fact later when I was started asking about the evidence, it suddenly dawned on him who he had been introduced to that day. But then another hallmark moment is I was at a hearing with the lead investigator, and afterwards I was given the opportunity to ask him some questions. So I go to the police station. I'm sitting in an office in the police station, and I introduce myself formally to the investigator because even though we talked in court, like I needed to formally introduce myself as the defense attorney and who I was and who I was representing. And he pauses me and he says, "Sarah, we know each other." And it occurred to me suddenly when I heard him speaking, and you hear the tenor of his voice, because he hadn't spoken before, that it was somebody I went to high school with.
Yeah. Wait, so you didn't know before that you went to high school?
I had not put it together.
Uh-oh.
No, I hadn't. And so I said, "Oh, yes, of course we did." And then in the same interview, I kind of sit back and I look around in this office. We're sitting in somebody else's office, and I'm seeing pictures all around of this officer's family. And it happens to be my high school boyfriend's office, because my high school boyfriend from my freshman year of high school is the jailer.
Wait.
And I'm conducting this interview in his office. And so I'm looking at pictures of my freshman year of high school boyfriend with his family. And
oh my God. I don't even know if I knew that. Maybe you told me, but that was 2 years ago. Oh my God.
So I'm conducting an interview of someone I went to high school with in the office of my high school boyfriend, who is the jailer in the small hometown.
Yeah. Oh my God. This could be just like not a small town, like a Hallmark comedy if they did Hallmark comedies, right?
Yes. And I also know the prosecutor as well, because he and I went to high school together. And so the first time
Did you like them in high school?
He was younger than I was in high school, so we knew of each other. And I still think he's an upstanding individual. I think this has been a very difficult case for him, as it has been for me. And it's hard when you're put into a position where you have always trusted the police, and suddenly you realize there are big problems here. And he's never admitted that as much. He's been very protective of his feelings toward the police, which I can understand that. But I think it's very difficult for him. And I hope ultimately he comes out and understands what needs to be done and does the right thing in this case.
Yeah.
Because so far it's been an uphill battle to get anybody to do that.
I just find that so sad and so crazy how people could just like throw someone's life away just because whatever, is it ego then for the police? Like, even though they don't want to admit it, like, hey, yeah, you know what, we did mess up here. Let's move on. I don't know.
I think it's partially ego, and then I think it's partially protecting your people.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is very, very Midwest roots, right?
Right. I'm not going to admit that I did anything wrong. I'm not going to admit that my police officers did anything wrong. Intentionally, at least. The lead investigator has stated that he acted very negligently in this case.
Wow.
And he said that on the stand. And there's no way around it. They certainly did. I think certain mistakes were made along the way by the police. I think that they started making choices to, excuses about how things were done. And then perhaps that became a big mess that they couldn't back down from at a certain point, or felt like they couldn't. So I think that they were buying hook, line, and sinker the story that was being fed to them by the accuser in this case. And it is very hard to tell when a stranger is lying. Another Malcolm Gladwell special, part of the book I just read, Talking to Strangers. Part of that book was what we already talked about before, which was transparency, how we expect transparency from other people. And we're not good at telling people's emotions if they don't project them the way we anticipate them projecting them, right?
Yeah.
Another part of the book talks about the truth default, which is we believe that people are telling us the truth. It is very difficult for us to determine when strangers are lying to us because we just want to believe that they're telling us the truth. And it requires a mountain of evidence for you to overcome that default to truth. And I think that's what happened in this case. I think they were being fed lies by the accuser. And I think that they defaulted to truth. And then when they saw the evidence, quote unquote, they didn't think to themselves, oh, we should have this tested. No, they said, oh, there's the evidence. It seems to be mentally what we thought it would be. And so we're just going to collect it and it should disappear at that point.
Just throw it in the trunk.
Apparently. So what's really interesting in this case, though, is what happened with the evidence, actually. I mean, that to me is just, the story behind that is just crazy.
And you still don't know what's happened to
No, we still don't know what happened to the evidence. So
I think it just probably got thrown away.
So so let me back up a little bit. I know it's like very disjointed.
Yeah, but you're fine. It's ADD talk.
It's fascinating. So I told you initially, the red flag for me was it took the police 3 weeks to search the house, right? Why would it take 3 weeks to search the house? And then I wanted to get the evidence tested because I didn't think it was my client's and I thought it would prove that it was planted there. Well, then as I was reading this 4.5-page police report over and over and over again, I struck upon a line that suggested that there was actually nothing else left in this particular room when the police came to execute the search warrant. So I received confirmation that everything had been removed from this room by the time the search warrant had been executed. Not with any malice, but my client needed his stuff. It was given to him. The police were well aware of this and knew that had happened. But then by the time they came to execute the search warrant, you're telling me that the only 4 things left in this room are things that could arguably be considered circumstantial evidence?
And they're missing.
No. According to the police report, those 4 things were the only things left in this room.
What?
Right? And so I'm saying, wait a second. So the people had removed the stuff from the room, which the police knew about. The police go to execute the search warrant, and all they find are these 4 things. Why aren't they asking, why are the only 4 things left in this room? Things that could possibly be circumstantial evidence.
Where's everything else?
Where's everything else? And also, why are these 4 things left in the room?
That's weird.
Right? The room that the accuser still had access to during that time, right?
Yes.
The things that my client are saying, these aren't my things.
No, so they're just laying there, 4 things.
So these 4 things are laying there. So obviously it seems like they've been planted there, right?
Yes, that's what I would think.
So, which is another reason, I really wanted to get my hands on this evidence. So then there is the pictures of the items that the police had purportedly gotten during this search warrant are pictures of the items that are being held up or like laying on the bed that was in the room. And so I said to the police officers, the way this should have been conducted is you take a picture of where you find the items, right?
Right.
You don't just hold up an item in a picture because where they're found could be very important.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if the only 4 items that are left in a bedroom are hidden in a compartment, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, maybe the person who is removing the items legally from the bedroom missed that compartment.
Yeah.
But we don't know because all the items are being held up in the picture or like just randomly sitting on the bed. So I asked the police officer, where did you find these items when you came into the room? And the lead investigator said, I don't remember. And I said, wait, but
what?
There were only 4 items left in this room minus the furniture.
Yeah, it's not.
And you don't remember where you found them? And he says, no, I'd have to check my notes. And this is when I was initially talking.
I have to check my notes.
And I said, okay, can I check your notes? Because you guys didn't give us any notes.
Yeah.
So can I see those notes? And he goes, oh no, I don't take notes. I said, well, you just told me you had to check your notes.
They were not ready for you.
And so he said, I mean, no, I don't take notes and I don't remember where they were found. So that was in January when I initially asked the lead investigator. So then during the motion to dismiss hearing, when I have him on the stand, I again asked the lead investigator, where did you find these 4 items in the room? And he tells me in detail where he found the 4 items in the room. I found the one thing on top of the bed. These 2 things were in between the mattress and this other thing was underneath the bed.
Oh, so he studied it.
And I said, oh, so how do you remember? Because when I asked you, 4 and 5 months ago, you couldn't remember where you found them. And he testifies on the stand, oh, well, I talked to the sheriff who was also there during the search warrant execution, and he reminded me where we saw them. And I said, okay, so you don't have any independent recollection of where they were, but you asked the sheriff. He said, yes. So the next day I get the sheriff on the stand and I asked the sheriff, where did you see the items when you came into the room? And the sheriff says, I don't remember. And I said, you don't remember? And he says, no, I don't remember. I said, well, I spoke with the investigator on the stand yesterday, and he told me that, you said you saw this here and these 2 items here and this other item under the bed. And he goes, I talked to investigator so-and-so a few days ago. Yeah. And he asked me if I remembered. And I told him I did not remember. And he said, well, just answer truthfully on the stand. And that's my truthful answer. I don't remember where I saw them.
But the day before, the other one.
The investigator had
So how did that end? Did the judge say, did you say, Your Honor?
Yes. In the closing,
bullshit?
I said, there's clear perjury here. You have the investigator saying where he found the items, and the only thing he remembered, he didn't have any independent recollection, but the sheriff did. But the sheriff's telling me he didn't have any independent recollection, and it sure as shit sounds like the sheriff was, being kind of coached by the lead investigator into telling him, well, oh, yeah, this is where we found the items. But the sheriff was like, no, I have no idea where those items were.
Wow.
So, which, again, this is a huge deal because how do you not know where these 4 items were found if they were actually found there, right?
Right.
But we don't have those items. So according to the lead investigator, what happened afterwards is they packed up the items in paper bags. He put them in his vehicle. He brought them to the station. He put them into an evidence locker. And the next day, he asked to get them out of the evidence locker so he could finish his paperwork. So he has the stuff on his table. He's writing out his paperwork. He gets a call, and he has to go tend to an emergency call. When he comes back, all he knows is the stuff is no longer on the table. He assumes somebody has cleaned it up. And he never asked to look for it or asked where it went again. Okay. And it's just gone. And nobody knows it's gone until I ask 2 years later, where's the evidence? So That's his story. So then I get the evidence custodian on the stand. The evidence, the sheriff's department has one person who's in charge of being like in charge of the evidence. And I say, what happens when a police officer comes back and puts stuff in the locker? He said, well, I put it in my system. It gets a barcode. It's logged into evidence, and that's it. And I said, well, what happens when a police officer wants it back to finish up their paperwork? And he goes, that doesn't happen.
He said that on the stand?
Yeah. He said, that doesn't happen. And I said, so you're telling me the police officers cannot come back and get evidence out and look at things? He goes, no, it doesn't happen. And I said, well, Investigator Kaler is saying it happened in this particular case. And there is no log of it ever having been put into the system.
That's because he threw it off the bridge into the water.
Yeah, who knows what he did with it? Who knows? But it clearly didn't ever come into the station. And it's not believable that he would have just left it out on the table and it just would have disappeared.
Oh my God, I could make up better lies than that.
Right?
So where is the case now, where it stands?
So
where are you guys?
We are currently getting ready to go to trial. There is, all of the evidence has been precluded. So it's really just the accuser's testimony versus the defendant's testimony. And we are getting an expert to come in and testify. And so we'll see what happens, but it's such a shame because, I just think it's such a travesty of justice that the case is still ongoing because, first of all, there's no evidence that it occurred.
And you're tying up this person's life.
Oh, yeah.
Like life, just sitting
We're
there
on
in limbo.
3.5 years. 3.5 years now. It's been ongoing.
Of this young person's life just stuck in limbo.
Yeah. Yeah.
For bullshit.
Bullshit.
Wow.
And lies.
And lies. And lies.
And if they lied about, and that's what's so frustrating for me is if that's what was done in this case, how many other cases has this been done in? And, that's scary.
Yeah. Well, I think like everyone listening right now, because we're getting to the end, we've been talking for an hour, which I knew with you would be amazing and it would flow. I think that hopefully everyone listening, and I know I will, that sends some like good, positive vibes to you, your case, and your client, as well as anyone else out there who is being committed of a crime that they did not commit.
Yes.
Absolutely. We're sending you good vibes because, again, I think we're coming to realize that this isn't like a bashing police officers, but a lot of people, but we're also putting them on a pedestal and thinking that they're never wrong, but we all have emotional issues. So really, they're all probably a bunch of 13-year-old men and women in suits, right? And so sometimes they make wrong choices.
And exactly. Yeah. I'm honestly not necessarily saying that this particular person or the police department as a whole had any ill will in this happening. As I said, I think that they believed hook, line, and sinker the story that was being told to them. And so they were not careful when they were doing their job to make sure that everything was done appropriately. Yeah. And,
I think this brings, though, even a bigger light to just like kind of the injustice of, and like the inequality, right? Like that we have between people and our government and our world and our whatever. And also a society, because I bet you half the people in the hometown probably are judging him, hate him, and want nothing to do, right?
Right.
But so as a society, we need to also come together and realize that like sometimes, even though someone's being accused of something, doesn't mean that there needs to be this like pitchfork society where then everyone accuses this person until the facts is lots of people out there are being accused of things they never did, or there's a bigger story.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's very scary because we do automatically prejudge. The minute I got this case and in the moment it landed in my lap, I said, oh, these facts are horrible. This sounds awful. And, and it was difficult for me because I thought, I'm not going to it would be difficult for me to spend my time. I'm a child advocate. I do like things that are very, warm my soul and that make me feel like I'm doing a justice in society. And honestly, it would be very difficult for me to do criminal justice on the defense side if I believed my client was guilty of these horrendous allegations. Yes. And that's your initial thought. It's almost like guilty until proven innocent in the mind of our society.
Which is what we programmed everyone.
Right?
That's all programming.
It certainly is. And that's a shame because the more I've gotten to know about this case, it's quite the opposite. And I would not have taken it because I didn't need to because I'm doing it pro bono. I would not have taken it if I thought that my client was guilty of this. And I mean, but it's sad because I do think that people automatically think once these allegations are out there that they're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah, I try not to judge anyone based on any allegation. You know what I mean?
Right.
Even some allegations, even if some are true, like people have issues,
Right.
And I think as a society, we need to not judge until we have our own personal facts.
Well, and it's interesting because I was reading more about a case that I'd known about, the Amanda Knox trial in Italy. I always thought based on the reports that I'd read that she was guilty as sin. Interestingly, I just read again in Malcolm Gladwell's book that she was innocent. And my thought was, wait. I always thought she was guilty as sin.
Yeah.
And then I read it and that is not the case. But the media made us think that.
Yeah.
And the way she was coming across made us think that, but we were all judging it based on our own
what we saw.
Exactly, what we were being fed by the media and what we interpreted as signs of guilt, which aren't actually signs of guilt. Wow. It was just somebody who was a little quirky. And it's funny because even until recently, I thought she was guilty.
I think I did too. Thinking I think there's one thing that's worse than being locked up for something you didn't do or being accused. And that's having that happen in another country.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Italy, right? Wasn't she in Italy?
Yeah.
What the fuck,
Oh, God.
And I have a friend who's been to Italian prisons and they're not fun from what I hear. But they made pickles or something. I don't know. But again, I never judge everyone, so I have a lot of interesting friends. So I like to.
I want to go make pickles in an Italian prison. That sounds fun.
Oh yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah! For about 3 days, we'll do it. So I end these with these 3 questions, okay? And I don't really tell anyone ahead of time. I like to just spur them on, spring it on them to see, so then I get a real live, raw answer.
Great.
What is one of the things you would tell your younger self, your inner child, little Sarah, young Sarah?
Young Sarah. I would tell young Sarah, don't worry about winning over other people's approval, because there are a lot of people who aren't going to like you in this world, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because you just need to focus on being you and everything will work out just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Because I think we all tend to want the approval of everyone, and I want everyone to like me.
Yeah.
And it was a very difficult for me to realize that's not going to happen, and that's okay.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's okay.
It's okay.
There are different people in this world and they harmonize with other people. And just because they don't like me doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Just because they don't like me doesn't mean they're a bad person.
That's it. Just different types of people.
That's right. And just being more confident in my own skin, which has happened as I've gotten older and I'm very appreciative of.
Yeah.
I wish that was something that I could have known in my heart at a younger age.
Wow. I share that. Yeah. Absolutely. 100% share that. What is one of the best pieces of advice anyone has ever given you? Think of.
Let's see. My mom told me when I was about 11 and I was going through a very contrary time in my life. I have to remember that with my own daughter because I like to think I was a perfect child. But she said, look, you wake up every day and you can choose to be happy or you can choose to be miserable. But ultimately, it is your choice to do that. And your choice affects everyone else around you.
Wow.
So if you're choosing to be angry and sad, that's going to affect everyone around you in a similar way. And if you're choosing to be happy, even if you don't 100% feel it, if you're making that choice, then that's going to affect other people in that way.
That's beautiful. I love that. I always say being positive and having a positive mindset and good is work. It's mental exercise just as much as physical exercise.
And sometimes you just got to fake it until you make it.
There's days that 100%. I fake it until I make it. Yeah. And sometimes I look at it, I can allow myself for a little bit just to push it out, you know? So what is the last piece of, I almost said evidence. What is the last piece of advice that you want to leave for our wonderful listening audience right now? What do you want to send them away with for their week?
For their week, I would say, oh man, there's so much pressure here.
I know. But I like to see whatever comes to someone's first mind, to the first thing to their mind.
Right. I would say just kind of building off of that, go through your life, go through your week with as much positivity as you can. And I'm not saying you can't sometimes have sad days or have sad moments, but what you're projecting is going to come back to you.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage everyone to the extent that you can project positivity and light, and it will come back to you. Even if you're feeling down, even if you're feeling grumpy, have your moment, but, think about how that you're experiencing it in the world and try to project that positivity as much as possible because it will come back and then you're going to feel better.
You will. And that's beautiful. And a lot of times it's just like allowing us to get through that moment.
Right.
That is a fear or whatever it is, and stay positive.
Right. And it's okay to feel it.
Yes, you have to feel it.
You have to feel it, but don't dwell on it.
No.
Don't let it affect you in every other way.
Absolutely.
Because that's going to make you stagnant or backtrack in your life.
Yeah.
And feel it and be okay with it and deal with it in whatever way you need to, whether it be therapy or medication or going to bed early or running or whatever that outlet is, feel it, but then try to move on because you do need to kind of move on in positivity in order to, accomplish the goals that you've set forth for yourself.
You have to keep the mindset. And I always say you got to feel it to heal it.
I love that. That's great. Feel it to heal it.
It's one of the charms of Gemini and ADD. Things come to you. You mix those words. But thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode. It's been amazing. I know I'm 100% going to have you back on because now everyone's going to be hooked and we want to know what's happening. As soon as
we find out what happens in the trial, let you know.
So we're living out a live Hallmark movie here on the Hair Healer podcast. But if anyone has any questions you would like me to ask Sarah, please feel free to email me at thehairhealer1111@yahoo.com. Please make sure you can send this to anyone, rate, review, subscribe, follow me at thehairhealer1111 on Instagram. And I hope everyone has a beautiful week and this helps put you in a good mindset. And love you all. Thank you and goodbye.